Hello again. There's been a little bit of a gap before I recorded this, so I don't remember how long ago I actually built this craft, but now I have my Thor able craft ready to be shot by the moon, and it's all it's got control and stuff. It should be able to get a pretty close flyby. I want to get within 5,000 kilometers of the moon, and I should have maneuver nodes and things now. So just zoom away from our launch site here. And you can see I've already targeted the moon, wherever it may be. Where are you, moon? There we go. So yeah, I've already went and got set target. So now I just need to warp until the relative inclination to the moon is low. So that kind of I've discussed this in a ton of other videos I've done, I suppose. So I'm trying to remember if I don't think I've exhausted the topic on this channel though, or in this series. So because of where Florida is, I guess, it is not at the equator. It's north of the equator, but it's close enough to the equator that it does have a direct point in the day, every day or twice a day, one of those two things. No, in this case it's just once per day. But if it was closer to the equator, there would be 2 points a day. It'd be pretty obvious if I showed you the appropriate graph. But when Florida, this point is in the same plane as the moon. And if you're further north than that, you don't have that opportunity. So, hitting the moon is a lot more difficult for the Russians, as Werloga is discovering. He's trying to launch from actual Russian sites to the moon, and it's really tricky. I've tried it a couple of times, and I was testing out some RadarNIC hardware, and oh man. So, let's see. This mission could very well fail. In which case, I suppose I've got enough spare cash now since I did a bunch of science and completed some other missions and I might just let it fail and post the video anyway. We've got relatively low reliability on this hardware. I haven't really put money into researching it, haven't put test flights into it. So now we're set to a relatively low inclination. I'll do a quick save here. I've been doing a ton of research of what happens, because right now I'd estimate, in terms of following the actual historic timeline, I'm around 1959 or so. Let's say early 59 or late 58. There we go. And so there's a lot of stuff that starts happening. We start, the U.S. Starts testing different hardware for kind of the first genuine intercontinental ballistic missiles. So the Titan I and the Atlas hardware are starting to begin testing. A lot of the tests, I'm looking at this wiki page. I'll post a link to it for this video if I remember to. It's just a list of every space flight in a given year, and so there's a bunch of interesting tests. It's this giant list of every suborbital and sounding rocket and such. And it's really interesting. So it kind of shows me when they started testing different hardware, when they actually had a success, an actual just the full goal altitude, or when they actually used it to put something into orbit. There's a lot that happens in the next year and a half, even just in the American program. Big firsts for me to do. So the Agena A upper stage, which is much lighter than the Agena later on, the BD. So I'll be building both of those as separate bits of hardware, the Agena A and the later Agena B or D. And that does a lot of things, including putting up spy satellites. So that Agena upper stage was both used on this Thor vehicle as well as on the Atlas, and even later on the Titan II. So let's see. So I definitely need to build the first Agena and then do some flights. I have to come up with some good missions, like see if we can do capsule recovery, which we should have soon once we unlock survivability. Just changing the yaw just a dash, because I'm seeing that I'm coming off of the 90 line here, and I know if I stay pretty close to the 90 line, then this will stay close to 0. And I definitely need to be arcing lower now, although I know from experience that for just straight trajectory sake, this is a better path for me to follow than if I were to just follow the prograde down like I usually design vehicles, or most of the American vehicles I fly. You can pretty much just follow the prograde down. But because this vehicle burns for such a short period of time, that doesn't work. I'm also doing some experiments with sub-assemblies, because Nathan Kell told me some tricks, Where Logo told me some tricks, and I'm having a bit of trouble with them because just the delta V readout in the VAB is wrong, I'm finding from how I assemble it. So maybe, if I can't figure it out in some of my background, I always try to, have a decent amount of like off-screen to on-screen time playing this series, so I don't want to put every dumb thing I do online, and in the inverse of that, I don't want to like go a huge amount of time between videos, because you should see the things I'm also having trouble with, right, or the things that as I figure them out. So if I have a lot of trouble with those sub-assemblies, I'll show what I'm trying to do and where it seems to be failing me. So if you watched my previous kind of dry run with this, again, I want to get this time lined up pretty close to this time, and then I have 2.5 minutes to actually kind of peak my altitude and then fix that. Oh, right, I need to light that engine. Good, glad I remembered that, although didn't need to do it quite that early, but that's okay. And light enough atmosphere, I can drop the cover off of my payload here. I would be able to do this or a similar mission with just a smaller solid once I have procedural solids, which is another technology that I'm going to unlock. It's advanced solids, which cost 20 science points, which is more expensive than a lot of its kind of the other technologies at the same point. And so I unlock them before the solids, because really, I can do with these other parts if I need to, or I could, in most of my previous career stuff, rather than using solids, I just use liquids. In my experience, that's sufficient. But to do some historical missions, make things a bit more close to the actual way they were done for America stuff. Say this should be one stage of solids, not two stages of solids, if I was actually following the Pioneer mission that I'm sort of recreating here with the Thor Able Pioneer mission. So yeah, that need to bring that way down. Alright, but at least my relative inclination is close, that is good. But yeah, I'm wasting a good bit of delta V and pointing down like this, but that's what I gotta do. Yeah, a ton of stuff happens. So we'll start building. I need to start unlocking the hardware for the Atlas launch vehicle for a start. That's going to be relatively expensive because I've got all new engines to unlock. But I do have, like I said, I do have a good bit of cash now. So pretty soon I'll have to come up with good missions for that, like something to do with Atlas Able, something to do and then Atlas Aeginas, and as I'm probably not going to launch another V2 as an example, or a WAC, right? Or like a Jupiter vehicle, like what I used for the Explorer. So over time, you kind of phase out the vehicles when you just no longer need something of that capability to be accomplishing new contracts. Like there's some kind of cheaper, older ones. Like I might use Thor with some hardware, like just as a sounding rocket, if I want to farm for some cash. But once I can hit the moon, mostly I'll be farming that. Because you get lots of contracts that request that you do a close flyby of the moon, or you get into orbit of the moon, or you impact your craft on the moon, and there's a lot of cash to be made from that. And I've developed a bit of experience at doing that. Like I find those missions more interesting than just sounding rocket contracts. So I'll probably farm whatever hardware I can do to get that. And I'd like it to be kind of like Thor or Delta hardware. I'd like it to be cheaper hardware. And so I shut down the engine. Not prematurely, I shut it down before I ran out of fuel and that's way more delta V than I remember having last time. But yeah, I don't need that anymore, so I can dump you. Sorry, I'd like to use kind of both historical and cheaper launch vehicles to do those contracts if I'm just doing farming. So I'll look into that. Okay, so there's the moon. Here's where I am. So just from experience, I know I want to lay down a point about here. Roughly there. Actually, okay, so there's a couple different ways to do it. So I'll show this way, because I kind of just want to make one video of this. Like usually, for a lot of my previous videos, I would do one launch and a build, right? But for big missions like this, I'd like to spend more time on just the one thing. Okay, so that's one way to do it. You just kind of guesstimate, kind of eyeball where you're going to go. Give yourself enough delta V. Yeah, and just kind of point. So here I can see that I'm going to come a bit earlier, and so if I move that about, I get a closer approach like that. But in practice, so another way I would do that, so let me just delete that, because I'm lazy and I just use MechJeb. Maneuver, node, planner, or sorry, maneuver planner, yeah. So home and transfer to target, so I already have that targeted, and then boom, it will give me something. It's, you know, something really good to start from, and that's what I will usually do. Because of course I'm gonna tweak it and whatnot, but in this case, see, this isn't an important number to change. It's just one I usually change for other reasons. Okay, so it set up this maneuver. So I need to basically get, you know, this actual maneuver node to match that number. So okay, so let's just add 32. So I want it to be really close, because in practice that's like actually going to be where I end up. So that's the magnitude of the maneuver node I need. Now let's see if I can just not fiddle with radial and normal, that would be awesome. But we will see. So it looks like so you know, right now I'm still dragging that way, but here I can actually, because I have it set to 100 seconds, or I could edit that. You know, MechJeb has a ton of useful tools that you may not have ever used, but they're really useful for everything. You know, setting something up like this and tweaking it. So I'm not getting any encounter with the moon when I drag or anything. So oh, something happened there. There. Oof, that's not what I want. I don't want to hit it on the way back. I want to hit it on the way out. So I'm going to have to mess with these numbers, which means I'm going to have to do some trig or something, which is fun. So I'm just going to actually reset this. And it's easier to, like, rather than optimizing from that number, go the other way around. So start from something that I know works. Okay, so that will hit, you know, smash right into the moon. And so now I just need to, you know, only have to add 50 meters per second, but I'm going to add them kind of one at a time. So if I add velocity like this, okay, so I can also, and I can also indiscriminately move this, which is nice. When I burn doesn't matter, and it's just about how much delta V. Weird. It's, you know, not really giving me a good visual guide. So I'll just kind of go back to where I was over here. Okay, so let me remove some from there. So it's best if I just add it to some other axis. It's really tricky. And the problem is when I'm adding individuals here, like the trig is, you know, the magnitude of this is, you know, this squared plus this squared plus this squared square rooted. So the biggest impact I can have in this actual number is by changing the biggest number. Changing these ones only has small effects on this. So it's going to be tricky. Good news is I've got all the time in the world. Let's see. So see, even though I'm adding whole meters per second here, this number isn't changing at all. This is in part why I don't like to use solid stages, because then now I need to get it exactly on this number. Okay, let's try shifting it that way, because I can go positive or negative radial normal. Well, that might not be the worst idea. Oof. Yeah, I definitely don't want to reduce this number to counter things, but I might just, like, right now just to get a closer encounter again. So I also don't need to do it from this view. I can go focus view here. Focus to view here. So now I'm seeing how close I'm flying by the moon. So it's not always going to show an encounter every time I click, like, you know, because of the crazy way that the what's it called? The crazy way that the program works, the spheres of influence system. Oh man, yeah, it's going to be really hard to hit this. I was kind of considering going down to just, you know, 3150, but that, you know, having to kind of fiddle like this is it kind of sucks. But if I was just short a meters per second of delta V, that would be, you know, that would be as bad or worse, in my opinion. Okay, so let's get, or so just fiddling with these numbers randomly isn't getting me anywhere, unfortunately. So let me try fiddling with the time. Okay, so I get closer when I do. See, it's not really showing me every opportunity, like, because it's not like when I, you know, if all of a sudden I change from 10 seconds here to okay, to there, to there. So it's not like, so as you can see, it was getting closer to the moon, and then boom, all of a sudden it doesn't think I'm going to get an an encounter, but of course that's not true. If I were to just burn that 10 seconds different, I'd still hit the moon. Like obviously this delta V is what's going to mess me up. It's just the tool, the conic sections and the kind of the future predictions have this weakness where they'll only they have to detect an encounter and then do this, and they only detect an encounter kind of once in your path. It's not going to show every possible encounter. See, I'll have to do a bit of fiddling with this, but ultimately I will be able to hit the moon. It's just about getting that number close enough. There's another kind of risky thing I could do. Well, no, I can't. If I had enough like actual separate tools to do it, I could have these burns spaced rather than just having them one right after the other. I could have a delay of like 30 seconds or a minute, and then therefore they'd be a little less effective. But I'm also forced to be burning in one specific direction, so that's not going to be any good. But yeah, I'll have to do a bit of sorting this out. But anyway, we did get a successful launch to low Earth orbit. I just need to kind of work out this maneuver, so I'm going to do that between videos here, I think, and then perhaps finish this and then just go show something else off at another video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Just need to work this out, and then I'll have another video, I believe. Goodbye.